Hello and welcome. Today we're holding a webinar on the Creative Economy Explained. And I want to welcome all of you. We're thrilled to have you here today. We've got a large turnout, so that's really fabulous. Shows that there's a lot of interest in this topic. Wanted to let you know that you can ask questions anytime you like. There's questions on your panel, and just simply type it in. We'll collect them all, and we'll answer as many as we can at the end of the webinar. You can also send tweets during the webinar, and if you do, then please use the hashtag #WhyWebinar. Wanted to let you know that the reason that we're doing the Creative Economy webinar today is because we've done a whole series on the creative economy in our Tech Trends articles and on our blog. So if you're interested in checking that out, please feel free to go to YFactor blog and take a look at those articles. You can also subscribe to receive our Tech Trends right in your inbox by email, and you can do that through our website. Also wanted to let you know that we will be recording this webinar, and we will let you know when it's available. It should be available next week. And without further ado, what I'd like to do is introduce Pranab Shah. He's going to be leading this webinar today and be explaining everything to you and showing you examples. It promises to be a really informative and interesting session. We look forward to your questions, so don't be shy, ask away. And if there's anything else we can help you out with, you know where to find us. We're at yfactor.com. And this is Anya Kodak, and I'm now handing it over to Pranab.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. For today's presentation, we're taking a hybrid approach of some theory, some experience-based observations, and examples of communities who have taken a keen interest in attracting and growing the local economy. Now, it's very important to understand that this is an attempt. The sector, literature, and practice in creative economy is evolving. So theoretically, we can trace it back to the late 90s and early 2000s. In practice, this sector has gotten increased interest and implemented maybe only in the last 5 to 8 years, actively that is. The economic depression required many communities to look at diversifying and strengthening the local economy. And the creative economy has been able to help this. So that's why it's so important for local economic development practitioners to understand the creative economy. It's also quite easy to go off on a tangent like I am right now, I guess. So we've structured the presentation in the most logical method we found. So without further ado, we will now move on. So the first portion is the creative economy, the theory. So we'll take a brief trip to a class in my master's program to take a high-level recap of the theory behind the creative economy. I will try not to bore you, but it is theory. So I'm pretty sure we all recognize him. This is Richard Florida. First, we're going to go briefly over his work. I like using his work as a precursor to the more dry theory because he focuses on the effects and virtues of the creative economy as it has on local economic development and the influence on communities. Granted, his work tends to be a bit urban-specific, but it's still a really good starting point. Florida started writing about the creative economy while he was a professor at Carnegie Mellon University. It was during this time that his work got recognized and got the attention of UFT, University of Toronto, and actually the province of Ontario as well. He now works for the Martin Prosperity Institute in Toronto and has published best-selling books on the creative economy and the creative worker characteristics. Now, I'm pretty sure we recognize some of these books here. He continues to write on the topic, and I do recommend picking up a few of his books. They're quite light reading, and they're actually fun to read. Now, his work focused around the concept that in an economy where production of goods is being shipped out, communities across North America need to embrace and become hubs for creativity and innovation. Ideas add value to products. Doing things different and better makes a company, an individual, and a community competitive. He did put a few prerequisites on what a creative community is. For instance, his 3 T's, talent, technology, and tolerance. So according to him, a community needs to support the arts, the creative sector, and culture as part of the talent T. A community needs to have a competitive edge with technology, particularly the internet, as part of technology T. And a community needs to be tolerant of different ideas and groups of people as part of tolerance T. Now, his scales for the tolerance index is what perplexes a few people, include what he calls the Bohemian Index and a Gay Index, which is it's aimed at measuring a community's acceptance of a group that face regular discrimination, but at the same time are a major source of the creative work class. Now, these have to be obviously boiled down and brought down to a local scale, but it's very important to note that a necessary prerequisite of a creative community is the acceptance of different groups of people. Now, moving on, this gentleman here, his name is John Hawkins. He actually started writing about the creative economies a bit sooner than Florida. I think it was probably 2001. But his work is focused more on creative individuals and the larger economy as opposed to their implications on a local scale. His first book, The Creative Economy, How People Make Money from Ideas, sparked interest amongst academics, and that's where the whole creative economy academic side kind of started off, and some early academic practitioners also used his work as a inspiration for developing creative communities. The best way to describe his theory behind the creative economy is through this chart, which is developed by the World Intellectual Property Organization. Origination traditionally comprises of, so if you look on your left-hand side, so that is the industrial economy structure, the classic industry structure, and this is the creative industry structure. So if you look on your left-hand side, you see origination and production. Origination is where everything happens. So you manufacture, you get the physical goods, or you give instructions to the next cycle. Now, the way it traditionally works is in origination cycle, someone gives instructions to the production cycle. They basically take the instructions from the cycle above, which then moves on to distribution. So there's not a lot of interconnectivity or communication back and forth in the industrial economy structure. Whereas in the creative industry structure, the lines between origination, production, distribution, and consumptions are very blurred. And as you can see, there's not just one single source of an originator or a producer or a distributor or a consumer. Well, I guess consumers, there's different, but basically there's very different originators, very different producers, and very different distributors. What happens now is that the people under origination, so under this part, are talking within their own group, first of all, and to the people over in the consumption cycle. And these are the users or consumers who are very creative. If you look at the way how free software, for instance, or video games, or even the travel industry these days, they run, they're totally dependent on instantaneous feedback from people, the end users. And not only in terms of their buying power, but because they know on an almost buyer-to-buyer basis on who is most likely to choose their product. In some of these industries, these people, the user customer, if I may call it, are saying, I have an idea, and the companies that allow the user to be the originators under originations have set an incredible, effective, and rapid supply chain for creating new ideas. So you're basically not creating ideas in a silo, but you are taking into consideration the production cycle, the distribution, and then the consumption, and taking that back to the origination cycle, creating new ideas, new ways of doing things, and creating things better. Now, this is just a few points that I wanted to introduce. It's by the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. A few things that may help wrap your head around what the creative economy is. So the first explanation they've provided is that a creative economy consists of knowledge-based activities focused on but not limited to arts, potentially generating revenues from trade and intellectual property rights. My favorite definition of the creative economy, and yet going back to the thing that I said in the beginning, that this is an evolving field, is that the creation, production, and distribution of goods and services that use creativity and intellectual capital as primary inputs. That is by far probably the clearest explanation of what a creative economy is. There's also other ones. It can foster income generations, job creation, and export earnings while promoting social inclusion, cultural diversity, and human development. So you're looking at the whole social aspect of it. And then the creative economy, of course, includes tangible and intangible intellectual or artistic services. So you're not just restricted to thinking of the economy in terms of physical goods and raw materials, but you're also thinking of it in terms of services and the ideas that people have, because the person with the better idea is the generator of the income. At this point, I hope you're not bored. A major point we have to take out of theory, and which I guess I didn't exactly specify in the examples, is that the creative economy is about people. People who can create their own innovations or can do things better. A community can play an active role in marketing to these segments, but the key is to know what you have and who your market is. And at the end, people first, business ought to follow, based on theory, of course. Now, so who are the creative workers? If it's so important to attract these people, I think it's equally important to understand who they are, I guess. Again, theorists across the world have argued, agreed, and disagreed about who the creative worker is exactly. So then the question of using occupational NAICS versus industry NAICS comes into question, and that just gets into a completely different ballgame. Like I said before, it's very easy to go off on a tangent on this topic. Anyways, we will look at some characteristics our good friend Florida developed to begin explaining what a creative worker is. Now, it's important to remember that we are talking cross-sector here, and that his work tends to be very urban-focused. So these are the characteristics as per Richard Florida. They are highly educated, generally with a bachelor's degree. I think he's up that to a master's degree probably now. Earning about $50,000 annually, working long hours, and preferring them to be flexible, remembering that a creative worker, there's no division between work and life. Their professional and personal lives intersect. Working in technology, finance, the law, or marketing. Now, this was developed when he preliminarily started talking about the creative economy, so he's added more fields to the sector, and the whole definition of doing things differently, it can make you creative, is not, it's a little ignored in this part, I guess. The creative worker is a creative problem solver. They are unafraid to take chances. They're unconventional and highly supportive of individuality and differences. They're happiest at bistros and concerts where personal interaction is important. And I again tell you, don't take the bistro's word in its literal meaning. What we're trying to say here is an atmosphere where personal interaction is possible. Using outdoor recreational amenities regularly is important for them. They want to raise their children with the values they have and like the values above, and they want to teach their children to respect these values. And most importantly, they will continue to live this way as they age. They're not going to stop becoming creative once they get older. This is a way of life for them. This is who they are. This gentleman, Gary Hamel, is an American management expert. He has written extensively on the creative economy, and he's provided some traits of what a creative worker is. And I like using this example because it looks at what a creative worker is versus what a traditional worker is. So first of all, they take initiative and opportunities to try something new and actually follow up on them. This is a marked contrast to, for instance, the obedient trait of most workers. Take your instructions and do what you're told. The second part, these individuals are creative, and they design something that different than what exists currently, be it business, product, or even process. This contrasts starkly with intellect. Creativity is less bound to the rigors of logic and proof, and it's more responsive to individual needs and yearnings for things that are new and better. And most importantly, creative workers have passion. This spurs them to action. They pursue something because it's an answer to an internal calling, which contrasts with diligence, which is basically the application of one's mind and effort to a task or project. It's more mechanical. Passion is more of an emotional effort, right? So now the question arises, who is your creative worker? Well, this is where you start differentiating each community's peculiarities, quirkiness, and individuality. Now, I say quirky in the most best way. It's almost like looking at oneself through the eyes of an observer, so you're looking at yourself. I truly believe that each community has a story. You just have to unearth it. I've included some examples on how communities have defined their creative worker and have started thinking of solutions creatively, and I hope that will help you and start thinking about who your creative worker is. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty of attracting and marketing to the creative sector, let's try to understand why attracting them is so important for our local economy. First of all, it's an opportunity to define your community, not just your economy. You are attracting individuals that will come to live in your community. They will not only bring businesses, but they will bring their families who will go to your schools and use the public arena and be your friends and support local businesses and all that. So you're defining your local community. You're not just bringing in a big industry that will leave in 4 years and who's only interested in the economic aspects of your community. The creative economy and the creative worker is interested in the triple bottom line effect. So a balance between social, environmental, and economic. The creative worker comprises about 30% of the total workforce, but upwards of 60% of people who are entrepreneurs and self-starters. So with the proper infrastructure and support in place, they can help create a microeconomy within your own community. Small and medium business sizes are the backbone of the Canadian economy and of many small communities, of course. And the creative workers are generally entrepreneurs and business owners in the small and medium-sized businesses. Creative workers also tend to support local buying. This directly influences the local retail and the local food environment, so a lot of money is actually put back into the local economy. I believe the multiplier effect for retail and local food ranges from $1 input results to $1.05 or to almost about $1 input results to about $1.03, depending. It does vary from community to community and from product to product, of course. And lastly, creative workers like to be able to boast where they live and work, especially where they work. If they are happy with your community, they will be more than happy to tell their friends and acquaintances about what a great place it is to live and work. So these are the reasons why, these are the main reasons. I'm pretty sure there's a lot more, but these are the main reasons why communities should attract the creative workforce and try to grow their creative economy. The other thing I want to briefly touch on before we move out of the overall theory phase is the ground level implications of trying to attract and retain creative workers in a rural setting. Having personally worked in a rural community right out of school when this was very fresh in my mind, I realized that there were certain limitations to what the theory had to say. So what I'm going to do here is use a Martin Prosperity Institute report. Now, Richard Florida does work for MPI, or does work in MPI. It published a report which spoke about how rural communities possess many of the physical and place-based characteristics to attract creative workers. It also talks about how this sector can be leveraged as an alternative opportunity to promote rural prosperity and attract a new generation to live in rural communities. Now, furthermore, other theories have summarized that it's important when we talk about rural creative movements, it's important to rethink, reevaluate, and reset a lot of the existing perceptions of creativity in a rural setting. It's all about figuring out what your creative element is and repackaging it in a way so that it's more marketable. The last point is more me as opposed to MPI. The directives of Florida may not be applicable to rural communities and needs to be taken as an overall guide as opposed to a checklist. Let's remember Florida's work does primarily focus on urban communities, right? So now we move into messaging for the creative worker/economy. Now, yet again, let's remember attracting the creative economy and attracting the creative worker is almost the same thing. So we've looked at theory behind creative economy and the characteristics of the worker. Now let's see what the messaging should be for this community or for this group of people. First of all, it needs to be about the quality of place and not about the quantity of things. The messaging has to be focused to make connections with an individual's personality as opposed to trying to tell them that it's a great place to do business or that your tax rates are low. What is your community's needs? Are you tolerant? Are you technologically advanced? Do you have an existing number of talent? So leverage your community's needs. And at the end, be quirky, be unique, and be vibrant. That's what gets their attention. Traditional marketing designs, let's say, or standard traditional practices will not get their attention anymore. We have to think outside the box. We have to start thinking of how do you get the attention of an individual as opposed to a site selector or a group of people looking to make an investment. Yet again, going back to Florida, according to his theories, these are some of the important attributes that a creative worker looks for in a community when they move, or this is the kind of information they look for when they want to live in the community. So life, a balance between work and life. Mobility, as in that they have the opportunity to move into different economies or do different things in the community. So it's not just about if they are, for instance, let's say an artist. It's not just about them being able to paint. It's also, can they go to other, can they go to a concert? Can they go and work with a potter? It's the different, they need variety in life. The amenities, of course, a blend of work and leisure, a sense of place, an active lifestyle, alternative arts and culture, the environment, diversity in terms of ethnic groups, and maybe choice of foods, for instance. And at the end, creativity and innovation. So I do understand that this is a little very high level, but it's important to understand where Florida is coming from. His explanation is trying to, he's looking at it and trying to explain it from a perspective of, I'm a creative worker. What do I look for in the community when I want to move in? Now, moving on to, before we get into messaging, the two things which are important is, and I know it may sound a little contradictory to what I just said, but it really isn't. When you develop your message, it has to be tied to a target audience, of course, but it also has to be tied to their perspective, not yours. What you think of yourself may not be what others think of you. You are not trying to market to yourself, you're trying to market to someone else. So talk their lingo, not yours. And at the end, don't be presumptuous. There may be a lot of likes and dislikes, and you don't know that. You don't know what they are. This is where market research and strategizing come into place. You cannot just blindly go ahead and try to attract the creative economy or the worker. So inclusion for the messaging part. Remember, all efforts, theories, and best practices need to be locally contextualized. Each community is unique. Just unearth your own story. Learn from others, but don't copy them, because what worked for one community may not work for yours. And if you did a copy and paste, you just also spent a lot of time and money trying to force something to happen in a new community, right? And remember, theory is great, but there is a variety, and not all theories apply to all communities. Now, we'll get into the fun stuff. The first part is place marketing. So the first thing on an implementation basis that we are going to talk about is how to market a place. It's very important for a creative worker to enjoy the place where they live and work. Promoting quality of life perspective is very important, and matching a community's assets to target audience is the hard part, and that's where the strategies and the market research come into place, of course. So the questions are, what is a quality of place, and why is this so important, and also why does it sound so general, right? So the quality of place is the reason why your community exists. It may be also the reason why people are moving to your community recently. So before any marketing can be done, it is important to know what your community has to offer potential residents. Yes, it sounds very generic, but when you start doing the exercise, you start unearthing why people are making the move, why people live there. And the question I like to ask you is, why do you live in your community? And that could be an answer to what your community's quality of place is. Now, rethink the possibilities of your assets. I will use some examples to explain this, to speak to this, of course. And then at the end, what are your intangible assets? Creative workers and entrepreneurs locate to business that start businesses where they have a balance of life and work. So they're not restricted to a 9-to-5 balance. They work pretty flexible hours, and they have a non-traditional day. So what are the intangible assets? What are the things you can offer to them that they may not be able to find in other places? Furthermore, place-based competitive advantage needs to be rethought when you're trying to attract a creative worker. It may no longer be about access to highways, proximity to an airport or ports, close to a big city, access to raw materials. All these things are traditional place-based competitive advantages, right? So it's more about the quality of life. So what is the balance of work and play? And can your community offer that? That's the place-based competitive advantage when you look at it in terms of the creative economy. Of course, you have what you have. Rethink their possibilities. Don't try to come up with something that that you don't have, because it will look fake, and they will. I'm pretty sure you will be called out on that. And at the end, they look for a balance. Work needs to be fun for them. As I said earlier on, their lines between their personal and professional lives are very blurred. They would like to be able to go out and have a nice mountain bike ride at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, as opposed to, having to go home at 5. So you have to rethink the whole 9-to-5 traditional work schedule. And they like flexible hours. They like to be able to do whatever they want at different times in the day. So we will move into marketing, place-based marketing for creative economy here. First example I'd like to use is Golden, BC. It's a community in the Kootenays, I believe population anywhere about 10,000 to 15,000. The community has excellent extreme sports and outdoor experiences, but like most communities that depend on the lumber industry, they had observed a slow decline in population and a loss of jobs. So when they realized that they could no longer effectively attract big industries to the community, what the answer was to rebrand Golden as the ideal community for extreme sports and outdoor enthusiasts, commuters, families of oil workers, and people looking to escape the rat race, basically, right? So, as you can see, outdoor lifestyle, how do you spend your free time, what's in your backyard? So very action-oriented questions. So it gets you to start thinking about these answers. And then, unfortunately, I can't zoom in, but basically, what can you see from your backyard? So the whole idea was that they have the best backyards in the country. So taking that and just saying, make Golden, BC your backyard, that was the whole idea of the campaign. So it's also a clever theme. This theme was carried through to other things within, the whole, let me rephrase that. A clever theme that was carried through Golden was the redefinition. So redefining the natural assumptions of what a backyard is, redefining the natural assumptions what a nightlife is, and redefining the assumptions of what a close-knit community is. So it challenges you. It gives you a solution. Basically, their nightlife, for instance, just because an urban perspective of nightlife is going to a bar or a pub doesn't mean that has to be the ideal and the only explanation of nightlife. It can be taking a mountain bike ride at 8 o'clock in the afternoon because they are in the most eastern part of the valley, and which gives them sunlight till about 10 o'clock at night during the summers. These are your stories. How do you have to figure these things out. They may be very obvious to you, but they are not to other people. Now, the first example here, and I have to preemptively say that this is a current Y-Factor project, and I do have permission from Oxford County to use this. I've absolutely loved working with Oxford. They get it, and they're willing to reevaluate their strengths and rethink the obvious from a creative perspective. So basically here, welcome to Oxford County, or welcome to Oxford Authenticating Community. The whole premise is that they're looking at attracting talented immigrants from larger urban areas by promoting Oxford as the authentic Canadian community. So basically selling the idea of, of the traditional white picket fence life that is such a strong part of North American achievement and the life here, and selling that idea to first and second generation immigrants, because these people didn't move to Canada to live in a condo and and share their 2-bedroom condo with their 3 kids. They want to be able to go out and live in a nice house and have a proper life. But they are also not aware that there are employment opportunities in rural communities. So Oxford is looking at that and saying, no, there are things you can do in our community and for half the cost of what it takes for you to live in Toronto, you can have a great house here and a great life. So that's about looking at your own assets creatively, of course, right? Second example, Jersey Doesn't Stink, one of my favorites. The state went a rebranding exercise, and it was spearheaded by local businesses and community members. Again, this may not be marketing to the creative sector directly, but this is an example of creative thinking. Campaigns like this get picked up by social media and digital media. That's how we found out about it. And the buzz is created at attracting a variety of interests. And guess who the main consumer of social media is? The creative workforce, right? Lastly, the city of Rockford. Now, they took a more physical approach and invested heavily into urban and landscape beautifications. Such improvements into the quality of place does directly influence the marketability of the community to the creative workforce. So they invested in urban beautification and used that as a marketing tool to get to the creative workforce. The second part here is developing products and programs for your creative workforce to attract them, to retain them, to help them. The creative sector can also, they can be grown holistically, so you don't necessarily just have to attract people from outside. You have to, you basically have to look at your current assets and develop them into products. These both enhance and support the sector, providing dual benefits. Examples will showcase this even further. Products and programs that are focused to to attracting the creative sector generally fall within the purview of what I like to call, or what academics like to call, economic gardening. In essence, it means growing your own, supporting local businesses, and enhancing the abilities of community members. Again, to get the attention of your target market, in this case, the creative workforce, the messaging needs to be unique, quirky, and vibrant. And again, I mean quirky in a good way. So when you create or when you develop your programs and products, be sure to be unique, quirky, and vibrant when you market them. And developing new products or programs may just be a rebranding or refocusing of the message of an existing program or sector. It doesn't have to be very complicated, yet it's more about creative thinking as opposed to developing something creative. And it's very important to stay top of mind, keep sending information about various things, but do be mindful not to overdo it. And again, go back to the part in the messaging where we said what you think of yourself is not what others, may not be what other things think of you. So be very mindful of that. The examples I'd like to use for developing products and programs, first of all, the Fusion Center in Ingersoll, Ontario. The center allows local youth to enable and enhance their abilities on a variety of topics, from music, life learning, technology training, and much more. But additionally, it's a place where local youth members get to meet in a synergized environment, if I may call it so, to create new ideas, discuss local topics, and just be more involved in the community. A lot of rural communities have this issue with youth retention. This is a really good way of getting the youth involved and appreciate their own communities. It shows that the community is willing to do something for them. As you can see, it used to be an old building that was retrofitted into a fusion center, and then there's different camps and there's different events that happen, and they happen at all times during the day. For instance, there's an open jam session for ages 14 to 18. It's 2:30 to 4:30, and anyone can go in and just play their music. Or there's a technology camp where they talk about, and they've actually partnered with Fanshawe College, which is out of London. I believe they actually have a satellite campus in Ingersoll too. It's about digital game development, Fusion TV, the IMAX Studio. So you can see all these different training sessions that the Fusion Center is providing the local youth. Now, local youth will appreciate this about the community and want to stay back and or promote, act as brand ambassadors. Ingersoll is a great place to raise your family, because when I was a kid, I got all of these life lessons which were offered to me free. That's a good brand to market to potential people who are looking to come here, right? Now, the other thing that I want to talk about here is programs can have dual benefits, particularly developing products and programs for the creative sector. They promote the creative sector of the community and allow the creative worker to showcase and promote their own work. And I like to use Elgin County as an example here. They looked at their cultural, physical, and demographic assets to develop what initially was tourism programs, but then they quickly realized that this directly influences their creative sector. So when they started off with the Savor Elgin program, and then now they have 3 more, because they've realized it's not just about tourism promotion, it's about supporting their local creative economy. As you can see, the Savor Elgin it's focused towards restaurateurs and chefs. The Elgin Arts Trail, of course, is focused towards promoting the work of local artists. Ports of Elgin takes into consideration the fact that Elgin has a lot of ports on Lake Erie, and this has never been, no community really has a yachting or a sailing culture, and so they want to promote that. And then at the end, Railway Capital of Canada, St. Thomas, which is a partner community with Elgin County on its tourism initiative, is regarded as the Railway Capital of Canada because they, I believe, at one point had most number of railway lines running through them. Just a tidbit, by the way, and I don't know if this is of any interest to anyone, but a jumbo, the historical elephant, actually died on a railway track in St. Thomas. This now they even have a brewery which makes a dead elephant ale. It's a little sick joke, but it's creative. It's looking at things that happen in your community and developing a product out of it. Yes, the Railway Capital of Canada is one product, but the fact that a brewery made a dead elephant ale is another example of creative thinking. The other examples we're going to briefly take a look at are FAB, which it's a Hastings County in Ontario program, which promotes cheese, wine, and breweries. It was in part developed as an artisanal cheese mecca to leverage the neighboring community, Prince Edward County, their wine tourism industry. So Prince Edward County has become really famous over the past 10 years. And are almost compared in equal to Niagara in terms of their wine growing prowess and the quality of wines there. So knowing that the neighboring community had a large number of wine tourists coming to their community, what Hastings County decided to do is we will promote cheese, wine and cheese, right? So that's how you're looking at things creatively. So it's not something that Hastings County had in their own community, but all these people are passing through Hastings to get to Prince Edward County, so why don't you stop them in Hastings and offer them a product that goes well with wine? And on top of that, they also they were actively looked into developing hops and developing local breweries. And the target market for this initiative was the creative workforce and the hobby enthusiasts from the GTA, because that was also one of the sources of people who went to Prince Edward County to start the wineries and the creative industries there. The other example I'd like to use here is the Green Chili Cheeseburger Trail in New Mexico. It's, yet again, Green Chili Cheeseburger Trail. So they've taken the whole state and basically mapped out the various different places where you can go and taste green chili cheeseburgers. So it is a tourism sector work, but at the same time you are promoting local businesses and you're promoting local chefs and restaurateurs through this. So you're showing your appreciation to the creative workforce. At the end, Branson, Missouri they take an approach of leveraging the current arts and theater sector to attract visitors and other artists to come and live in their community. So they're trying to grow their own theater and arts sector there. But at the same time, they're also known for a family-oriented community. So, and that's another way they're promoting themselves as being like a very family-oriented. And actually, another thing they're also doing is very supportive of the military. They have I believe, the longest Veterans Day celebration, maybe a week long or something like that. So showcasing their support for the military. So you get from one angle the artists coming in, from the other angle families moving in, and from the other angle possible military families moving into Branson. The next steps to marketing to the creative economy or the worker is, of course, leveraging technology. The creative worker is a voracious consumer of technology in all its forms. Their preferred medium of researching the internet. If you want to talk to this segment, you have to have a creative website, and you need to have it to be interactive, experience-based, visual, and exciting. Some examples I'm going to use here. So these examples are Elgin County. So this is an arts trail. I believe that, yes, that is the arts trail. I guess I should have put a bigger image up there. But it's basically, so there's 4 different types of artists that Elgin has recognized, and they're plopped into a nice interactive map on their website. So whenever someone goes to see it, not only is the information there, but it looks really good, giving the perception that your community is looking outwards and it is ready. It's a marketable community, right? The other aspect was Savor Elgin. Yet again, just looking at even if you just look at the designs, right? Very clean, very modern, aimed to talk specifically to the creative workforce. And all of this is experience-based, so you're not targeted. So if you click on wineries and breweries or restaurants, farmers markets, agritourism, it takes you directly to the business and the information. Another way through which you can add interactivity to your website is by having widgets that allow you to post a directory, post events, and maybe itinerary builder or trip builder directly from your website, and that can be driven by either by your own directory or by a directory maybe through the chamber or the BIA or something. Additionally, Elgin County just released a visitor app, so you can actually go on iTunes and download the Elgin County app. So that's another way you are staying on top of technology improvements in website. Now that here is the front page of the Prince Edward County Build a New Life website. Prince Edward County was one of the first communities that looked at actively marketing to the creative workforce, at least in Ontario. They marketed heavily to the GTA, to what's called the field dreamers. So field dreamers, people who grew up in rural communities, who are nearing retirement age. Now they want to go back and retire in a rural community. When they grew up there, they were involved in farming. They helped their parents out, or maybe their cousins or someone out in their farms or in production. So they want to have a hobby farm. They want to have maybe a chicken farm or a cheese farm or a winery. So it was all about that. It was connecting the hobby enthusiasts, the field dreamers. That was the target market to the potential in Prince Edward County. And then the website it's very active. So it is visually thrilling. I'm not sure if it's appeasing, but the good thing about it is that it's experience-based. So all links go to someone's personal story, and you can see how they went about creating their own or building a new life in Prince Edward County, if I may. The other example, just going back to the Ingersoll Fusion Center here. Now, if you were to actually roll over these sections, they just pop up into the different names of what these rooms are. And this is, for instance, the art room. Now you can click on it and you can get more information. You can see what's going on. This is an interactive map of the Fusion Center. So it's just going to that next level of interactivity. Just taking something that may be obvious and turning it into a cool internet gadget, right? That's what differentiates you from other communities doing the same thing. And so it's always important to be always thinking creatively about what you can do different and what you can do new. It's not just about attracting the creative workforce. It's also about yourself starting to think creatively. Now, the other aspect of the website is in the creative workforce. They use social media a lot. They actively participate in conversation and idea exchange, and they've become active on various social media fronts. So to promote your local asset and your products, of course, you will have to get the attention of this group, which means you have to be active on social media. Why? To attract, to retain, to involve, and to stay top of mind. This, for the creative economy, is social media strategy is required, and this has to be different from your standard marketing strategy that tells you, the different marketing avenues and the marketing channels you can take. The focus needs to be on social media here, because if they are the primary consumers, and it's not just. Let's remember that there's no gap, or there's the lines between their personal and professional lives are very blurred. So if they see a tweet or they see a Facebook post about your community, even if they are at work or if they are doing work, they will be interested to see what your community is up to if they are looking to move, right? So it's more about becoming active on social media and trying to do things better than what other communities are, and getting their attention, building that rapport, building that clout score amongst your different social media outlets. So just a few examples, and there's a lot of examples on social media, but two that I wanted to be used to that use it quite effectively. So the first one is the City of Vancouver. They have a new initiative, I believe, called Vancouver Talks Green, or Talk Green Vancouver. So they want to become the greenest community in the world, and that has, in essence, attracted a lot of creative workers, a lot of people in the environment and the clean tech, green tech field, right? So now they also want to get the community involved in it. So they want the community to start becoming more environmentally conscious and environmentally friendly. So they took an active approach through Twitter, which a lot of people use now. So they have a Twitter account, and they post information about different environmental issues and things in Vancouver, things that would be of interest to the creative worker, particularly in clean tech, green tech firms, right? The second one is the Golden BC Live the Outdoors, or Make Golden BC Your Backyard campaign that we had discussed earlier on. The good thing is that they've kind of carried through the imaging and the brand across all different aspects. So their website looks the same as their Facebook page, looks the same as their Twitter page. Yet again, this is how you use Facebook to connect with people that have a shared interest of the outdoors and the extreme sports. How do you talk? It's about starting that conversation online and eventually having them come out for a visit, because Golden's strong belief is once they come to Golden, they will not leave. So it's all about how to get them to Golden, and then starting conversation through Facebook was seen as a very effective and a very cost-efficient way. And let's always remember, the website, leveraging technology, the website and the social media are very cost-effective. The best part, they give you analytics, which you can now take back to your council or your committee or your CEO or the director of your department, and show them the results of the expenses. So you have a measurement for ROI through technology. Now, at this point, I would want to talk to you about retaining what you have attracted. So it's not just about bringing people in, but it's also about retaining people that you have brought in. So I'm not sure what's going on here, but we're at least on the right slide now. So once you have attracted the workers to your community, it's very important to retain them. There's a few things that you need to understand. So you have to maintain the quality of place. Remember, the creative worker came to your community because of the quality of place. You can't have them come there because they enjoy a conservation area and then sell your land to condo developers. That's just not going to work. They're just going to move out. You have to continue to develop products and programs and keep them interested and keep them involved. So in that way, you can involve them in the product and program development. This group of people, yet again, going back to their personality traits, they are very willing to solve problems, and they're very enthusiastic. And if they truly believe, if they have passion about your community, they will help you. The other part, remain technologically relevant. So if it's infrastructure development when it comes to internet maybe, or if it comes talking about having an app or talking about having a good website, you have to be top of mind. You have to remain relevant. And the other one is policy support for necessary infrastructure development. Yet again, going back to the characteristics of what a creative worker is, they like alternative arts and culture. So once you attract them, you have to start building a cultural center maybe, or a theater, or walking trails, or heritage tours, or culinary programs. So it's not just about getting them there. You have to retain them, and that is key. Getting someone to come live in your community is always easy. Retaining them and making them a part of the community is very important. These are just some examples of two communities that have done the same. The first one, Talk Green Vancouver, yet again going back to what we were talking before, is they want to retain and be active in the environmental sector, which they hope will not only attract people in the clean tech, green tech sectors, but will make people in Vancouver more environmentally conscious. They already are, but becoming a better, building a better community is their viewpoint, and then the hopes for that is it will attract like-minded individuals, and Vancouver will, in essence, become a truly green city. The other one that I want to use as an example is Champaign County in Illinois. They have the University of Illinois in the community. And then on your right-hand side, you can look at the upcoming events. Now, this is upcoming events on their ECDEV website. This is what the Economic Development Department is promoting. They're all technology-related. Why? Because Champaign County attracts a lot of tech workers. So they want to not only attract tech workers, but they also want to help them network through a tech cocktail. They want to give them information about using software like Constant Contact, or something about QuickBooks. So it's not just about, it's about developing products that are relevant to your target audience. It's not just necessarily developing products. So yet again, going back to the fact, what is your target market and what are the products you have that are directly applicable to them? And Champaign County does a really good example of how they keep their current IT and software engineers interested, and how they keep them in the community. That concludes my presentation. At the end, I would just like to say, in the words of Richard Florida, and you can read that if you'd like, the main point here is that you have to do what you are doing, of course, to, for infrastructure development and everything, but you have to, it's critical that you improve your quality of place and build a climate for people to interact and forge social ties. And at the end, this is not a case of either or, but rather a case of and both. So you have to do both to be successful. At this point, I would like to open up the floor for question, and Mike, I will try to answer any questions that people may have.
Okay, well, I've been keeping track of the questions that have been coming in, and I've got a couple here. So the first question I have for you is, does that mean all creative workers are entrepreneurs?
Not necessarily. So there is, in theory, yet again going back to literature, there's two sets. So there's your super core creative workforce, and there's your creative workforce. So there is differentiation, but the answer to that would be a high percentage of creative workers are entrepreneurs. So about 30% of the total workforce in Canada, for instance, actually in the States, are creative workers, but 60% of entrepreneurs are creative workers. So there's a very high proportion that are entrepreneurs.
Well, that's good. The next question I have is, can a big company be a creative company?
Yes, and I think the best examples are Google and Apple. They do things differently, so thinking creatively is as important as being creative, being an individual who is creative. So on both ends, yet again, though, it goes back to the company, the philosophy behind the companies, and then the people who established them. So they are creative workers. They are individuals who strive and have passion for what they do, and that's why they end up becoming big but creative companies.
All right, I got another one here. They asked, can we get a copy of the slideshow via email? And I'll answer that one for you. Basically, after this is all done, we'll have a recap of the video on the website, and we'll also include Pranab's slideshow as well for download, so you can get both of them. And we'll send out an email afterwards just to let you know where you can grab that. Another question here is, are there standards or codes for creative community assets?
There are certain codes and standards, but since there's no governmental definition, and that's why it's really hard to develop them. So the U.S. has I'm not sure if you're asking NAICS codes or cultural assets, so I guess that those would be could be occupational assets as well. Occupational codes as well. I guess the short answer is yes, there is, but at the same time, not all occupational codes are creative. So, for instance, I'll use an example of a mechanic, right? So a mechanic, an automotive mechanic, has a occupational code, and which falls within your advanced manufacturing or your standard manufacturing as well. But if he's doing something creative, he becomes a creative worker. So the issue here is there has been no division between a creative worker and a non-creative worker in an occupational code. So it's really hard to separate them and do any type of analysis for a creative occupational code or something like that.
Okay, I've got another one here. It says, do you feel that the NAICS coding system is too limited? Our community is finding it challenging to find some of the codes useful or even practical. Your thoughts?
My thoughts to that, I would answer with, yes, it was a nightmare for me during my master's programs as well. I was doing research on a pretty new field. It was impossible for me to get a NAICS that was relevant. For instance, in Canada, there are certain NAICS there are certain reports that do say that these are the NAICS for certain creative economies or creative sectors, but yet again, I would take them as a guide, not as a checklist. It's really impossible at this stage to segment the NAICS codes into the creative sectors. And then just another tidbit, in Canada, we spend about $18 per person on a survey. In the US, it's $42. So if you look at that ratio, the NAICS codes in the US and the information in the US there would be a lot more information you could find about the creative economy in the US than as opposed to in Canada. So we are limited by our survey as well.
All right. I got one last question here, it looks like. It says, I already have a few creative companies in my community. Does my marketing change if I'm looking at attracting workers versus companies?
The creative economy it's more about personal touch, and it's more about making that personal connection. So the question was, you want to attract creative workers, Mike?
Yeah, looking at attracting creative or workers versus companies.
Okay, no, it's generally the same kind of messaging. Your quality of place is really important. Your information about how your community is distinct and different from the other communities is different. So it follows the same thought pattern. But now, if you're looking at industry scale, so if you're talking, I don't know how big your industries are in your community, but for a small company, yes, it would be pretty much the same thing. So when you're looking at attracting a small company or attracting creative workers, small creative firm or small creative workers, would be the same kind of marketing tactics. But at the same time, if you're looking at just attracting a larger creative economy firm, then I guess you would get into the situations of infrastructure requirements like for standard industries. So they would be a little different, I guess a bit more emphasis on infrastructure if you're looking at attracting big creative economy firms. Do we have more questions?
That looks like it's about it. I'll wait another second if anyone has any last-minute type-ins. No, looks like that's it.
Great.
So, yeah, thank you, Pranab.
Thank you very much. I hope everyone enjoyed the presentation. And please feel free to contact me directly. My email address is right there if you have any direct questions.
Oh,
we have a question?
It just said, where are all the participants from? I guess, are you referring to the people that showed up to the webinar? Or?
Well, if that's the case, then we have literally from across North America, actually. We have everyone from BC to Wisconsin to Colorado to Ontario to Nova Scotia. So it's all from all over North America.
All right. Well, great info. Thank you, and thanks are coming in on the chat there. So, thank you, Pranab.
Thank you very much.